graduate of the Industrial Design program at the University of Alberta and a LEED accredited professional. As one of the principals of EcoAMO, she arms her clients with knowledge to assist construction projects and business operations, allowing them to transition towards sustainability. As a collaborator, teacher, and troublemaker, that's what she calls herself, Brandy works with her team of bombshells to excite people about efficient, healthy, and environmental design. She has taught green design and industrial design at the University of Alberta and has presented to numerous audiences across Canada. So please help me welcome Brandy as the moderator.
So, as these things usually go, let's do a couple of housekeeping items to begin with. Trying to keep this a tight ship. Some of you I know like the Twitters and the Facebooks. But if you can turn off your push notifications or your alerts or your ringers or whatever is going to be boop or zing or whir, whistle, play some crazy 90s music in the middle of the presentation. It'd be nice to keep us all focused on what's happening with these lovely gentlemen up here. Another housekeeping item is just if at any point you need to get up and go to the washroom, it's just out the front doors here and to the right. If you've gotten outside, you've gone too far. My job tonight is to keep us on task, and as Rob alluded to, sometimes there's a lot of fire and passion up on the stage, so I'm going to do my best to keep us on task and focus. So, from a layout for this evening, we're going to have 3 panel discussions. In between each one, we'll be taking 1 to 2 questions. So please take a few minutes before you raise your hand or indicate that you have a question to prepare that question and not stream of consciousness talk your question. I know as Edmontonians, we are very strong people and we like to come up and just fly by the seat of our pants and ask questions, but it really helps us stay on time if you guys know what the questions are that you're asking. So, I do have a couple quick things for you guys, just so that we know you as an audience. I'm not going to make you stand up or anything or hug the person next to you. But if you could just raise your hand and let us know if you fall into any of the following categories, just so we can make sure that we know you as well as you might know us. If you identify yourself as a student, please raise your hand. Excellent. If you're a designer, raise your hand. Awesome. Engineer? Good diversity. Home builder? Oh, just making my heart sing. How about inspectors? Oh, yes. We got a couple of you. That makes me even happier. Equipment or material suppliers? A couple of you. All right. Excellent. If you guys have questions, talk to these guys and whoever just put up their hands. Consultants. Active citizens. Yeah, all right, there you go. Be honest with yourself. A parent? Yeah, awesome. Homeowner? Future homeowner? All right, so all of us might be interested in the content tonight. Good. An optimist. Who's an optimist in this room? Awesome. Good. All right.
Manufacturer of components.
There you go. Manufacturer of components. Great. Excellent. So now that I feel confident that you can see that I have a very formal and informal way of doing things, I do run a tight ship. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stuart Fix. He'll be the first person presenting this evening. Stuart is a senior sustainability engineer at the City of Edmonton and the president of Renew Building Science. Stuart is a professional mechanical engineer with a master's degree in building science and holds a certification as a passive house designer, both internationally and in North America. Stuart is a founder and director of Passive House Buildings Canada and sits on the Passive House Institute's US's technical committee. He has been involved in the design of over 90 high-performance building projects across Canada, including lead energy design of the Station Point Greens and Mosaic Centre mixed-use developments. That's soon to be language. I'm very excited. Here in Edmonton. Stuart is an accomplished technical designer and an experienced contributor to interdisciplinary groups, in a global setting. In his position with the City of Edmonton, Stuart is charged with leading the implementation of the city's green building plan. Please help me welcome Stuart Fix.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Brandy. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Can everyone see the screen? No.
3 heads in the way.
Can you all hear me now? Can you hear me in the back? Yeah, I don't have to. Okay, good. How far down can you actually see the screen? I'm noticing people are sitting in front of it, just so I know. Someone blurted it out.
Good.
Does anyone care? Doesn't matter. Shut up and start. Yeah. Okay. So. Oh, it's too late. Too late. Okay, we'll just get going.
Just move out of the way.
You guys move to the side.
Yeah.
This is my time's running, guys.
Table's okay. Table's okay.
Table's good.
Whoa. No.
Well, now it's better. Go into the way, too.
Would it be better if I was outside? Be quieter. Okay. I don't have a lot of time. We're just kind of rattling through things quickly here. I'm sort of going to wear 2 hats here sequentially. The first bit was asked to do a brief intro into net zero building design basics, so that when these 2 gentlemen start going off, everybody is sort of hopefully with them. And then secondly, I'm going to run through some of the new initiatives that at the City of Edmonton we are undertaking to sort of promote, enable, and execute the Green Building Plan. So here's a summary of that, what I just told you. In my world, questions are always welcome, but Randy's in charge, so you can run those through her. So getting started here. So, design basics. What are we trying to do? What's a net zero energy building? Probably most of you know what that is, but I'll repeat it. It means in a nutshell that you're going to generate as much energy as you consume in a year and on site. Different people might have different selective definitions of that, but that's kind of what we're talking about here tonight. How do we do that? Well, we basically have 4 general sets of tools. I call them energy design tools. Conservation, recovery, efficiency, generation. When I say conservation, that means envelope airtightness, super insulation. Windows are in there as well, same sort of qualities can be applied to windows. Recovery is, okay, we've already used some energy for something, how can we get it back? So you've got ventilation, airflow that's warm, you've got to keep exchanging air. Well, you can use an HRV, heat recovery ventilator, to recover that energy in the air. Do the exact same thing for domestic hot water. These are recovery tools. We have efficiency tools. So we do need energy of some sort. We do need heating for sure in this climate. And most of these high-performance homes need some level of cooling. Some people get away without it. That's a personal preference thing. So if we do need energy, well, how do we deliver that energy efficiently? So that gets into mechanical systems. COP stands for coefficient of performance. And it just is a ratio of how much energy went in to how much energy did you get out that was useful. And then finally, there's generation. Once you've gone through the other 3, typically you get to generation. And in that category, we have passive solar, which is a building design attribute. And then we have the wonderful renewable technologies that you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with, solar, wind, etc. So what do we do with this toolkit? Well, you break each selected design element into a capital cost, and then you look at how much energy can that design element either save or generate in the case of generation tool sets. You start adding together these design elements, prioritizing lowest dollar per kilowatt hour design elements until you get to where you want to go. Typical order of priority, and this is led by the dollar per kilowatt hour analysis, is to conserve, recover, then be efficient with your mechanical, and then lastly generate. What you'll see these guys talking about tonight is how far do you take that before you start to generate. There are different approaches on the table. Lastly, how do you actually deliver a net zero energy building? Well, you actually have to create an energy budget for the building, which involves, unfortunately, the occupant behavior, which is the wild card. We always throw a number at this is how people should act, and they never act that way. So then you start deciding, well, how much will they deviate from ideal behavior, et cetera, et cetera. But again, you decide this is what we're budgeting, and then you add together all these design elements until you will generate all that energy in a year. Finally, then you kind of take a 10,000 foot view and you say, well, you know, this is our capital cost. Does it meet the rest of our project goals? Because as some of you would be aware, other people, other than the people in this room, perhaps are interested in other things than energy efficiency in a house or a building. What are some of these other goals? So, yeah, what are these other goals? I mean, the big push, everything we're talking about here tonight is energy efficiency, and I'm not using the word efficiency right, but that's the generic term. People typically get into this stuff because they're concerned about climate change, GHG emissions, and we want to mitigate that, so we need to use less energy. That's the whole push here. But obviously, there are other important things in real life, you know, air quality, indoor environmental quality, occupant comfort, material selection, you know, what is the impact of that material from where it was taken from, and then therefore once it's in your house. You know, building durability and resilience doesn't do us very good if we build a wonderful building, but it falls over in 10 years and has to be rebuilt. Simple operation, keep it simple, stupid. You know, if there's any lesson that's been learned, I think, through some of the pilot projects and experimental homes that have been built, is that if you start tying multiple systems together, it's just a nightmare. So in the same vein, low maintenance. And then finally, you know, beautiful aesthetics. There's some architects in the room, I'm sure. And, you know, they have a job for a reason, because people like to live in wonderful, beautiful, unique buildings, and we can't ever forget that. And I like this picture because it's about as unique as a house can get, I think. But if the engineers designed the world, you certainly wouldn't have that building. That's net zero design in a nutshell. If you've got any questions, I'll take a couple now. I don't know. I've got lots of time.
So that's part one.
That's part one, yeah.
Okay. So for part one, do we have any takers for a question? Please raise your hand.
Sure.
What is sitting there right now? Do you guys have certain pathways? Do you have any incentives for people that would like to add it to
So,
Now we're going to get into that.
so for those that may have not heard the question was, is there anything the city's doing for incentives? Do you agree with construction?
Yeah, I'm going to get into that. That's the next part of the talk. So just, okay, there's no questions on net zero design, so good. I will. Oh, Gordon? Oh, yeah.
If it's to be classified net zero, are you allowed to consume any fossil fuels, or does it have to be all electric heating?
I don't think you are. That's the problem with net zero design, is it's basically, up until recently, it's been just an industry definition. There's been no certified definition. It's something that, you know, guys like Gordon Hall here, they came up with this and said, this is what we should do. You know, we want to be as low in our environmental impact as possible, especially from an energy perspective. The best that we can do is basically be net zero. We annually generate as much as we consume from renewable sources. That's about as good as we can do. The next step would be to actually generate in real time, generate the energy that you need to use year round. So even in the winter, you would be generating exactly what you need, and then in the summer you'd be generating exactly what you need, or more, right? As soon as you start using fossil fuels and then generating renewable energy to offset that, you're really stepping into the world of carbon neutral, which is an offsetting game. You're basically saying, well, I'm producing all these emissions, but then I am producing equivalent in GHG-free emissions, therefore I net out. That's kind of a different world. You get into carbon trading and all that stuff, and it's kind of a whole. This net zero energy thing is a purist sort of approach. And Peter, I think, as we talked about this still too, but NRCan is finally come around, and they've come up with a net zero energy definition. They've got a net zero energy pilot program. So they're coming on board, and they have an official definition, and it is just, produce as much as you consume on an annual basis from renewable sources. Okay. So part two, some of you, maybe all of you, are aware of the City of Edmonton's sustainability initiatives. The big guiding action policies, the way we green. It's a wonderfully long document that says wonderfully flowery things with no timelines or costs associated with them. A derivative of that is the Green Building Plan, which is another document like that. It has more wonderful plans that we plan. Hopefully someday we implement. So I've been at the city for 4 months now, and I've loosely been tasked. I've never actually seen a job description, to be honest. But I've loosely been tasked with sort of trying to implement the Green Building Plan things. So I basically started by taking a stock of what's there, and the document's available online. If you're interested, you can slog through it and see what's there. Generally, the initiatives that are on the table are based around education for everybody, capacity building for industry, people who might supply products or do design or construction, etc., in regard to the greening of buildings. Greening, I don't like that word, but that's in there. Then there's an internal process review of city bylaws and the zoning bylaw, and just the general way the city goes around converting parcels of land, whether they're existing or not, into buildings, etc. Seeking barriers to people who actually do want to invest in green buildings. A big focus of the plan is this idea of building energy labeling. I'm sure you've all heard of an EnerGuide rating. It's basically an assessment how energy efficient is your home. This is built on the mantra of if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So if the city is serious about, I should mention this, so if you read the text of the Way We Green the Green Building Plan, it actually says that Edmonton should be a carbon neutral city. That is a goal, right? That's a tremendous goal, but again, when and at what cost, right? So in the effort of getting to that goal, this building energy strategy, building energy labeling strategy, basically allows you to take stock of what do we have, okay, now how do we fix it? How do we make that better? Obviously, there's money involved in this stuff. Everybody's aware of that, so looking at different ways of financing green building initiatives is part of that. And then finally, there's a big focus on retrofit programs. How do we deal with the existing stock of buildings? So that is, in layman's terms, what's sort of written there. Of all the initiatives, basically one has been tackled, and that is the production of the Green Home Guide, which is falling in this sort of education parcel. It's a wonderful document. That was sort of launched late 2013. It's available online, and if you're, preaching the choir here, I think, but if you guys are interested in more tips and strategies for either greening your home or buying a green home, I certainly recommend that you search that out. Other than that, the plan schedule is completely off track and inactive. There's basically not much else going on. There's lots of wishful thinking and hope and optimism, but not a lot of doing. So I'm trying to sort of grab this, take it by the horns, and see what we can do. My focus is going to be, and now I'm starting to talk about things that I would like to happen, not necessarily are happening, so I can use you as a sounding board. You can consider this a sort of sneak peek of what I'm going to try and do, and you can judge me on whether or not I succeed, I guess. But I'm going to focus on the labeling aspect, then the financial side of things, and then the retrofits to start. So delving a little bit more into this energy labeling idea, the original plans again called for inter-guide labeling for homes. And they said, well, we need to get pilots going, we need to get incentives going, we need to build capacity for providing these audits and these labels, and eventually the city would regulate that is mandatory for any new home built, any home that goes through real estate transaction, etc., would require an inter-guide label. The whole purpose of this is it becomes part of the real estate transaction, it gets sort of more front and center to the citizens of Edmonton in their day-to-day life, etc. Energy efficiency therefore becomes on the radar. Hopefully the market starts to put a value to buildings that have higher or better ratings. And I pushed forward for a little while on that, and then I realized, well wait, there's no internal support for regulation. So what are we doing here? This is a waste of time. I was kind of at a loss for a while, to be honest. Not sure how to proceed without that sort of end goal. What's the point of incentivizing and doing pilot programs if you can't eventually force the people that don't want to do it to do it? So, luckily, I came across a project down in Calgary, which is a funny place for green projects to be born. But my heat. You might have seen this, being the keen people that you are, but a group of UC researchers basically said, and this started literally by a prof at UC who had bought what he thought was a green home and got pissed off and kept coming home when it was cold. And he said, we should be able to fix this. We should be able to do better than this. So, being the geography prof that he is, he said, well, we could take infrared thermal photography, we could put it on an airplane, we could fly the whole city, and we could figure out how much heat is being emitted from these buildings. And then he combined it with his 3D spatial mapping tools, GIS and LiDAR data and all this stuff that I don't really understand, and basically came up with a way of very inexpensively and quickly mapping the comparative heat loss through the roof of buildings in Calgary. They did the first pilot of 300 buildings, and the second pilot is finished. 33,000 buildings in Calgary. That's kind of what you're seeing here. If you go on the website, you can check it out. Basically, this service is delivering, or potentially delivering, something very similar to what the InterGuide regulation process would have delivered, but it's doing it for a fraction of the cost, and it's doing it without anyone's willing participation. So, I said, yeah, this is good. Let's see what we can do. Here's just a quick comparison of, they call it my heat, and it's a work in progress. But basically, what could this do? Well, in 4 days of aerial photography, basically you could map the entire city of Edmonton, and quite feasibly could have that website up in a year. The cost, in this case, could be borne by the city, and it would be upfront in the neighborhood of $4 a house, let's say, and maybe $2 a house to actually maintain and update the site annually. Compare that to the InterGuide process, which Dave and I were arguing about this costs earlier, but somewhere in the order of $400 to $800 up front, basically, per house, and then rinse and repeat every time you'd like an update. So we're talking a significant difference in cost. And again, we're talking like a 1-year turnaround for the sort of aerial mapping approach versus slow, painful, tooth and nail fighting, adoption through industry, through eventual regulation, which is maybe 20 years out or something like that. The other benefits of this is that it provides a central portal that's public that we can basically dump all of our green initiatives into as the City of Edmonton. It is, if you go on the website and peruse it, it's really cool. It's cool like an iPhone is cool. And to be able to make green homes cool like an iPhone is just amazing. So you get this excellent visual feedback. We can dump things like the walk score, we can dump any other information. We all have these maps. The Solar Energy Society has a map of solar panels in Alberta. Every sort of supplier or designer has a map of projects they've done, well, we can get all of that data, we can dump it into this map, so that when you say, hey, I want to go buy a house at Summerside, you pull it up on the map, and you start flicking through, well, these have terrible heat scores, well, this one's pretty good. Oh, look at that, it's also LEED Gold. Look at this, it's, so all that data is there. You can bring it up on your mobile phone. You say, oh, I already live in a home, and man, my heat score is pretty bad. I sure would like to fix the roof or something. Oh, let's look up contractors who actually would help me do that. Well, there they are advertising on the side of the home, or side of the website. And they're actually helping then to fund this site year to year. And again, compare that to EnerGuide. The legal freedom of information policies that NRCan has around the EnerGuide program are so tight that even if we had every home in Edmonton rated through regulation, I don't think we could share it. I don't think we could put it on a map and say, actually be able to look up someone else's score. You'd have to ask them. Someone would have to be proud of their score and say, hey, buy my house because it has a good score. And if it doesn't have a good score, don't look at the electrical panel because that's just a number I scratched out or something. Anyway, so these are some of the potential benefits. Where does that all leave? What's the point? Well, it might be a lot of money if it didn't go anywhere, but what I see this doing is providing the foundation and basically justification for a really aggressive deep energy retrofit program that would be led by the city. So again, this is all conceptual. This is what I want to do. See how successful I am. But we start with residential homes. We can prioritize sections of the market based on the score from that mapping so that the capacity of the industry doesn't get overwhelmed, get price gouging, things like that when it's just the Wild West. The city can offer technical support, which is something that I'm working on. We're going to ask people to drastically improve the energy efficiency of their homes, but we've got to actually help them do that. Well, here's a drawing. Here's a couple of recommended wall assemblies. Here's something you can do for that attic type. Here's something, here are window installation details, so that contractors who may not right now have the skills to do this stuff in a safe and safe manner, they can pick up that drawing and then they can execute it. We can inspect it. This also, as I said, this online portal connects homeowners with the designers, contractors, and material suppliers that help them execute their retrofit. We can have this all online. We can have customer ratings of all these contractors. Like if you've got a bad contractor, tell the world, get it on that site. If you've got a great contractor, tell the world, get it on that site. They'll get good business. This helps fund the advertising stream, which helps take the cost away from the city. And then finally, I would look to basically fuel this retrofit program through financial support, preferably not through gifts, grants, things like that, because that would be a lot of money. But ideally through a non-traditional funding source, basically funding that is a loan or bond type, and there's some sensitivities there, but basically that borrowed money needs to be paid back via the property taxes so that it is tied to the home and not the homeowner. So that somebody could do this retrofit, live in the home for 5 years, and then walk away and not worry about not having seen the benefits of the home. This program, again, emphasis is on the deep. There's no point in offering incentive to replace a furnace and just some windows, because then the homeowner's going to say, well, now I'm done, we're good for 15 years. If we do this right, we should only have to fix the building once, and then the problem kind of goes away. And then we can let the province kind of handle the new buildings. Excellent. So what would that mean if that was successful? If the residential sector has success in that with these initiatives, basically you should go rinse and repeat through commercial and industrial. There's some subtleties there, different building types. Towers are difficult to predict their energy efficiency based on just what the roof is doing, because there's so much more wall area. But again, if we fix these buildings properly, we should only have to fix them once. And it's not going to be a constant bleed on city resources. I think that for now we can leave the province to increment the energy code for buildings, because cities does not have jurisdiction to enforce any sort of energy efficiency beyond what the building code says, unless we became a charter city, and that's a whole other thing, like Vancouver. So I think if we focus and put our efforts into the retrofit market for now, we might be able to even change the market to a degree where the builders say, hey, these retrofit homes, we're actually stealing business away from our new constructions because they're more energy efficient, they're comfortable, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then maybe we can change the market that way too. Maybe that's optimistic. That's it for now. So I welcome feedback.